Translator, Henyi. Editor, Henyi. A fist thundered outward. The array patterns carved upon the curved blade blazed with cold brilliance, releasing a dense chill that spread through the air like winter frost descending upon the battlefield. A ruthless smile curled upon the corners of Jia Ming's lips, for with this single strike, this opponent who had once possessed the strongest battle prowess of all ages would soon vanish entirely from the world. The thought filled his heart with boundless delight. Jushuan and the others in her group cried out in alarm. What had happened to Ling Han? Shu, at that precise moment, Ling Han's body suddenly bent like a willow swaying in the wind, and with an almost miraculous motion he evaded this fatal strike. How was that possible? The smile upon Jia Ming's face froze instantly, yet before he could even recover from the shock in his heart, a terrifying cold gleam swept through the air, slashing toward his chest. He had never expected that Ling Han would still be able to react. Furthermore, he had just executed an ultimate move moments earlier, leaving his condition at an unprecedented low. It was utterly impossible for him to dodge this sword. Pooh! In an instant, the sword struck squarely in the center of his chest. The terrifying slash sent his entire body flying backward as blood burst forth like a crimson fountain from the wound in his chest. How is it possible that your soul is still intact? Jia Ming clutched at his chest tightly. The bewilderment in his heart surpassed even the pain of his injuries. If he could not understand the truth, he would die, filled with resentment. Ling Han revealed a faint smile and said calmly, "Why should I tell you?" Previously, when the Earth Dragon had launched its sudden attack upon him, he had indeed been affected, yet the black tower within him merely trembled slightly, dispersing that discomfort instantly. He simply remained unmoved and calmly set a trap for his opponent. Jia Ming was so furious that he wished to kill something. That had been his ultimate move, the very technique that had allowed him to surge up to the 51st position upon the stone of martial intent. Yet it had actually failed to affect Ling Han at all. The realization nearly drove him insane. Could it be that this was the gap between the first place and the 51st? Wah! He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Firstly, the raging fury within his heart surged violently, and secondly, the wound upon his chest was simply too severe. The killing aura had transformed into countless tiny swords roaming through his body, shifting and stabbing within his flesh, bringing such agony that he wished for death. Even tears of blood trickled from the corners of his eyes. His hatred burned fiercely. Had he not been overly confident in his ultimate move, he would never have suffered such grievous injury at Ling Han's hands. In terms of true strength, he was in no way inferior to Ling Han. After all, he too was an ultimate genius, and moreover he possessed the advantage of standing an entire cultivation tier higher. And yet now, before the eyes of everyone, he had been completely defeated by someone of lower cultivation. How could he possibly endure such humiliation? Ling Han flicked his sword lightly and charged forward once again with killing intent. He intended to completely eradicate this man. Jia Ming hurriedly retreated, unwilling to die by Ling Han's hand. As long as he could recover from his injuries, he still had a chance to turn the tables. He was absolutely not weaker than Ling Han. However, his body had already been grievously injured. Even the slightest movement caused blood to gush wildly from the wound, nearly causing him to stumble and collapse, while his complexion turned pale and ashen. Ling Han had already arrived before him, his sword slashing toward Jia Ming's neck, intending to end this battle swiftly and decisively. The hatred within Jia Ming's eyes ignited like raging flames. He had always been arrogant and confident, and thus he carried no life-saving treasures upon his person. On one hand, he believed that no one in this world could or dared to kill him. On the other, he believed that possessing such a treasure would cause him to rely upon it and hinder the realization of his full potential. Yet now, regret flooded his heart. He did not want to die. He wanted to live. Only by living could he take revenge, and only by living could he surpass Ling Han. The sword descended. Pa! A withered yet powerful hand suddenly extended outward. 2 fingers pressed together firmly, clamping the cutting edge of the sword between them so that the blade could not descend even the slightest fraction. An old man clad in black robes appeared abruptly. His figure was tall and robust, and it seemed as though a volcano slumbered within his body, capable of erupting at any moment to burn the heavens and destroy the earth. Looking toward Ling Han, he smiled faintly and said, "Young man, striking with such ruthlessness, surely your heart harbors sinister and vicious intentions." Ling Han lifted his sword slightly. The old man also did not dare to resist such a killing sword force head-on. He withdrew his hand and stepped backward, while simultaneously lifting Jia Ming up with a casual motion. "Respected Master Tong!" Jia Ming's face lit up with pleasant surprise. This was truly a rescue arriving at the moment of greatest danger. Even with his usual arrogance, he could not help but reveal his excitement. This old man bore the surname Tong with the name Yang Wen. He was a powerful expert of the Earth Dragon sect, and his cultivation had reached the heaven tier. Tong Yang Wen smiled and actually spoke respectfully. Hey, from now on, you must remember to always wear the treasured talisman bestowed upon you by the sect leader. Do not be so presumptuous again. A single moment of carelessness could cost you your life." "Yes," Jia Ming nodded hastily. Having just been saved by him, no matter how wild Jia Ming's temperament was, he would not dare display arrogance at such a moment. Tong Yang Wen's gaze shifted toward Ling Han, and his expression instantly darkened. To strike without the slightest hesitation against a fellow disciple of the same academy, your moral character and disposition truly make one's teeth tremble. However, the academy's core principle is to cure illness and save lives. I shall therefore first cure you of your arrogance and allow you to taste a little hardship." He struck out, and origin power surged forth, condensing into a massive black hand that seemed capable of blotting out the sky and covering the earth, crashing down toward Ling Han. It was truly nauseating. He clearly intended to settle a personal grudge, yet he still spoke such hypocritical words. Ling Han transformed into a bolt of lightning and retreated in the nick of time, saying indifferently, "Old fool, do you still have any shame? This was originally a duel, and since we had already agreed to fight, one should accept responsibility for life and death. Earlier, when I faced danger, why did I not see you jump out to help me? If you want to, then don't bother erecting some kind of plaque proclaiming your chastity. It's utterly disgusting." Tong Yang Wen trembled with rage. This insignificant spiritual infant-tier cultivator actually dared to speak to him with such insolence. He stood at the peak of the heaven tier, only one step away from breaking through to the shattering void tier. Wherever he went, people would offer him nothing but worship and reverence. Yet now he was being scolded to his face with a torrent of insults. The fury in his heart nearly drove him mad. "Lad, you actually dare insult me!" he barked, his eyes blazing with killing intent. He had not originally intended to kill Ling Han, because he valued talent. As a slave, Ling Han was quite acceptable, and one day he could deliver him to the immortal realm. After proper brainwashing, Ling Han would become a loyal lackey. Yet Ling Han had dared to curse him so viciously, and thus his killing intent was naturally stirred. After all, he was merely a slave. So what if he died? So be it. No matter how outstanding his natural talent was, he could simply replace him with 10 other lackeys. Ling Han smiled faintly and replied, "Dirty old swine. Why can you not be cursed? I am a heaven-grade alchemist, my status equal to yours, so tell me, why can I not curse you?" Tong Yang Wen let out a scornful laugh. If this had been a few hundred years ago, he indeed would not dare offend a heaven-grade alchemist, for it would damage relations with the Alchemist Association and affect the martial arts world of the entire realm. But now, the concoction of the realm pill was about to begin, and once that was completed, there would no longer be any need for alchemists. At most, they would simply bring a few gifted talents into the immortal realm and nurture them there. Yet in the end, they would still become lackeys, a mere servant. What right did he have to act so arrogantly? Then you are truly courting death. Tong Yang Wen's killing aura erupted fiercely. Injuring fellow disciples and insulting your seniors, such disgraceful conduct must be punished. I shall represent the Restore Heaven Academy and mete out this punishment. To throw your seniority around, there are always plenty of words to justify it. Old dog, you have allowed me to witness shamelessness at an entirely new level. I am truly impressed." Ling Han mocked with a laugh. "Damn you!" Tong Yang Wen could no longer endure it. Another palm struck outward. This time his killing intent surged violently, and the great hand he swung down carried far greater terror than before. Patterns lit up one after another, and the oppressive aura of the heaven tier pressed downward like the weight of the heavens themselves. Even the mere air pressure alone would have crushed an ordinary spiritual infant tier cultivator into pieces. Ling Han swiftly dodged and arrived beside Zhuchuan Stretching out his arms, he swept her into his embrace and shouted at the same time, "Who knew? Rabbit, let's go!" To confront a heaven tier expert head-on? Only a fool would attempt such madness. Translator, Henyi. Editor, Henyi Ling Han seized Zhuchuan slender wrist and drew her into motion without the slightest hesitation for the others. Although Yuan Chenghe and Li Fengyu were his followers, they were likewise disciples of the Restore Heaven Academy. Tong Yang-wen would not descend into madness to the extent of committing a foolish act such as laying hands upon them. As for Hunyu and Rabbit, their movement techniques were not inferior to his own, so there was no need for him to burden himself by carrying them along. Most importantly, the lighter his burden, the swifter Ling Han could move. Ever since he had forged the body of lightning, his speed had indeed soared to shocking heights, yet it could only barely rival the velocity of a heaven tier practitioner. Thus, if he intended to bring several companions while still escaping from a heaven tier elite, that would be sheer lunacy. Trying to escape, Tong Yang-wen sneered coldly. Taking a massive stride forward, he thrust out a colossal palm, its shadow blotting out the sky as it swept forth to seize them. He was fast, yet Ling Han was no slower. With the demon fairy steps activated, his figure flickered like a wandering ghost through the mist. Simultaneously, he swung his sword in a reverse slash. Sword ray erupted in dazzling brilliance, and with the terrifying might of the Revere Life Sword augmenting the strike, this blow displayed his power in full. Even Tong Yang-wen dared not allow this attack to strike him directly. He could only shake his right hand sharply, sending out a torrent of energy that collided with the sword ray and dissolved the threat. Ling Han immediately seized that fleeting moment to flee far into the distance. Zhuchuan clung naturally to his back, requiring no effort from him to support her. With a swift motion, he drew forth the setting sun bow, gathered origin power into an arrow, and shoo, 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 multiple. One. Though no physical arrow rested upon the bowstring, the overlapping might of three mystical powers was still utterly astonishing. Tong Yang-wen had no choice but to continually wave both hands, striking down the incoming arrows of origin power that had caught him off guard, causing him to roar in furious rage. Damn it! His cultivation clearly suppressed Ling Han completely, yet he was forced to deal with one clever maneuver after another from the youth, and could only watch helplessly as the distance between them widened. In the end, his fury boiled over, all the blood within his body surged violently, and he no longer cared about Ling Han's attacks. He transformed into a raging arrow himself and charged straight after Ling Han. Shoo! 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 The arrows of origin power struck his body, yet they only tore through his clothing and exposed bulging muscles beneath. It was as though his flesh had been forged from precious metal. Within the Earth Dragon sect, every disciple cultivated body arts. Tong Yang-wen's innate talent was certainly not equal to Jiaming's, yet a man capable of advancing to the heaven tier could not possibly be ordinary. Moreover, the higher his cultivation realm, the higher naturally the attainment of his body arts would be. By relying upon his superior cultivation level, he could make up for the disparity in quality. He charged straight through the exterminating Dragon Star arrow and rushed toward Ling Han. The heaven tier was truly troublesome. Ling Han sighed inwardly. For a mere spiritual infant tier cultivator to have achieved this much already bordered on miracle. Left with no alternative, he placed a real arrow upon the bowstring, poured forth his full strength, and released it toward his opponent. The destructive might of this arrow was far too terrifying. Even Tong Yang-wen dared not confront it head-on, and could only thrust out his palm in a strike to knock the arrow aside. Yet that brief instant was all Ling Han required. Once more he seized the opportunity to flee, widening the distance between them by a tremendous margin. Shameless old wretch, just wait until I break through to the deity transformation tier. I will personally chop off your dog's head. With these words shouted behind him, Ling Han turned and sped away at full speed. Hu Nu also stuck out her tongue and made a face. Old wretch, next time, Nu will come beat you again. Rabbit wore a look of utter grievance. It had clearly done nothing, so why did it have to run for its life along with them? Why do I have to flee with the lot of you? I feel terribly wronged, it cried in deep dissatisfaction. You have stolen so many spiritual herbs that suffering a little injustice once or twice can only be considered fair and proper. Ling Han replied with hearty laughter, yet the winds beneath his feet roared even louder as he accelerated further. Tong Yang Wen pursued once more, but the gap between them had grown too great. After chasing a short distance, he had already lost Ling Han's trail and could only halt, his heart filled with vexation. After running for a long time, Ling Han gradually slowed his pace. According to the map, they were already close to the herb garden. Rabbit, the herb garden lies just ahead. How about it? Aren't you tempted? Ling Han asked with a grin. Rabbit swallowed hard, yet stubbornly replied, Do you think I'm some ignorant bumpkin who would lose control over a few carrots? The gold-seeking rat also crawled out from the front of Ling Han's robes, its bright eyes glittering with eager anticipation. Spiritual herbs and similar treasure were its greatest delight. Nu wants them too, Hu Nu shouted as she eagerly joined in. Cold sweat dripped down Ling Han's forehead. Among the 4 companions beside him, 3 were gluttons. They advanced another step forward. The barren desert finally vanished, replaced by lush forests and verdant grasslands stretching ahead. Before them stood the crumbling remains of a courtyard wall. Clearly, this place had once suffered devastating destruction. Is this still a herb garden? Ling Han murmured. Although spiritual herbs grew from nature and thrived upon the nourishment of heaven and earth, the conditions required for their growth were extremely strict. Therefore, this herb garden had originally been divided into countless sections, each possessing its own specialized array that altered the environment to suit a particular type of spiritual herb. Yet the destruction here was far too severe. Most of the arrays had already been shattered, which naturally spelled disaster for the spiritual herbs that had once grown here. As far as the eye could see, only ordinary trees and plants remained. Perhaps a few spiritual herbs still survived somewhere within this vast place, but locating them would certainly not be accomplished in a short time. Rabbit, now is the moment for you to display your abilities, Ling Han said. Pay, I'm not a dog with such a sensitive nose. Rabbit immediately retorted. Quickly find them. Hu Nu ordered fiercely while glaring at Rabbit. Her tone grew even harsher. Otherwise, I'll eat you. Rabbit feared no one, yet Hu Nu's threat made it uneasy. It immediately began sniffing earnestly and led the group in their search for spiritual herbs. However, the area was simply too vast. Even if Rabbit truly possessed a dog's nose, it would not be able to locate spiritual herbs instantly. They wandered endlessly through the surrounding regions, while Rabbit repeatedly shook its head, insisting that it could detect no scent of spiritual herbs at all. 3 days passed without any success. Thus they decided to depart and head toward the Langya Library first. After changing direction, they continued onward. Less than half a day later, they encountered a cluster of imperial palaces. These structures must once have been incomparably magnificent, yet now they were almost entirely ruined. Furthermore, even from afar one could sense the presence of demonic beasts haunting the area. They advanced cautiously toward the imperial capital. The demonic beasts roaming here were far from ordinary, and aside from them, there were also powerful cultivators exploring the ruins. They could not afford the slightest carelessness. Those who sought treasures in such ancient ruins would show no courtesy. Given the chance, they would kill others without hesitation in order to seize treasures for themselves. Naturally, avoiding demonic beasts remained the most crucial matter. Among the various auras drifting through the region were several that were extraordinarily powerful, reaching the heaven tier. Such creatures were enemies Ling Han could not yet confront. The library is in that direction. Ling Han held the map bestowed upon him by the Lunar King. After determining the direction, he took the lead and set off. The region containing the imperial palaces was vast, yet even the largest land eventually came to an end. Before long, 3 humans, 1 rabbit, and 1 rat arrived before a pavilion that had remained miraculously intact. The pavilion possessed only 3 floors and was not particularly large. In fact, amidst so many towering imperial palaces, it appeared rather small. Yet it was the only structure that had not suffered even the slightest damage, not even a single crack, which made it strangely conspicuous. Precisely because of this peculiarity, it attracted countless people, and the area around it was already crowded to the brim. Ling Han lifted his gaze toward the pavilion. There, a plaque hung high above the entrance, bearing 3 bold characters, Lang Ya Library.